Hello, everybody. So yes, I am Laura Booth. So I am Head of Admissions and Marketing at Hymers College. I have not stood in front of a room like this in about 9 years. So apologies, I am a little bit nervous. So I'll start by talking a little bit about my journey to independent education. So I did a master's degree in lifestyle promotion and started my career working in agencies which focused on retail and leisure destinations. So I led the digital team, looking at about 80 different retail destinations, and we focused on everything from brand awareness to driving footfall and increasing revenue for our tenants. So from giant shoes to dinosaurs, NASA events, chocolate factories, we focused on all sorts of different things to encourage people to come into our destinations. And then I moved to Bishop Burton College, which has two campuses, one in East Yorkshire and one in Lincolnshire. So I went from working in an inner city marketing agency with clients from Dundee all the way down to Poole, to working in FE and HE education. So we were a land-based college predominantly, but we had 150 courses across all sorts of different subjects. And I thought it was going to be really relaxing after being in an agency. I had worked in an agency alongside marketing managers on site and thought they've got a really easy job. They've got one place. Why can't they go out and get that picture or that video or that thing or that quote that I wanted? And now I know why. So I did all sorts of different things. I did countless photo shoots and advertising campaigns, prospectuses. So I worked there for about 8 years. So we started off with a really hefty prospectus with every single course listed in it, and went down to these tiny little mini guides. And I don't think it'll be long before they ditch them all together. From an FE college perspective, there is a lot of school liaison. There's a lot going into schools and selling yourself. And so they were always really handy to give people an idea. But I do think it'll get to the point where they're probably not needed. We give them out at open events, but we don't get a huge amount of demand for them the rest of the time. We have a digital version and an online version now, and the majority of people are using the online version. I worked on a wide range of events. So 7 large-scale community events whilst I was there, 23 prospectuses. So we had thousands of different visitors. That included creating new events as well, such as Spring Live, where they got to come and see the farm in action and get involved with what we did as a college. That's my daughter. She still asks me now when she can go back to my old work and see the animals. So I think me moving into the independent sector is a huge disappointment for her, if I'm honest. And we worked on lots of different equine events as well. So we had an equine centre there. So we had commercial equine, commercial gym, as well as the FE and HE side of things. So I worked on 3 different opening ceremonies for equine events, and then made a lot of friends as part of that. And we did things like fundraise. So we raised over £1,000 with one event for charity, which was really nice. And lots of different UCAS events, school events, open events. It was not relaxing as the Loomers found it. It was not relaxing for me, and not everything always went right. So there was the time when my colleague, in his wisdom, we'd booked an insert. So this was right when I started, so a lot of print media. We booked an insert in the Hull Daily Mail, and he decided it would be a really good idea to get them to print extras so that we could send them out as a door drop. Little did we know they were going to send them still in the middle of the newspaper, and so we literally found ourselves with piles and piles and piles and piles as we pulled it out. And there was also the time when I arranged for a TV pilot for a new show called Dancing with Horses to be ran at the college, and told my manager the day before that, oh, so the Duchess of York really wants an arena to warm up in. And he was like, excuse me? Fergie's coming. I was like, yes. And who else is coming? I was like, oh, well, there's somebody called Ashley Roberts. He was like, the Pussycat Doll. I was like, oh, I thought, yeah, I didn't even know who she was. So yeah, it didn't always run smoothly. Come in a bit of a funny order, I think, as it's been downloaded, sorry. But we ended on a high. So one of the last things I did was I developed new websites and we won an award for those websites. So that was something that I went out with before I ended up at Hymers. So Hymers is an all-through school, aged 3 to 18 in the centre of Hull. So quite an urban environment. Those of you that know Hull, and I know we've got some people that work just down the road here, so they know it quite well. It's a very strange place in that you drive down Sunnybank, which is a really busy road with lots of terraced houses, quite a deprived area. And you turn into Hymers, and then you've just got all of these open fields and this absolutely stunning building, which feels very much like Hogwarts when you go into it. So we have, like I said, just over 1,000 pupils. About half of those are probably in our senior school, but preschool to year 2 is also becoming increasingly popular. So we're full in some of those year groups for next year. But if I boil my career down into what I did and what I have done so far, I think it's been about getting people to go to places. And 2 key objectives that we had at my last agency kind of sum up what I've followed through the whole time, which is it is my job to inspire, delight, and engage people. And it is my job to create charismatic and compelling experiences. But I don't normally do that by standing up in front of people. So please cut me some slack today, if you will. So when I started, I realised that I didn't know as much as I thought I did about independent education. I'd not been in independent education myself. I grew up in a council house. I went to a previous polytechnic. I had no idea. I thought it was all posh people that were driving in Porsches, and I really needed to begin to understand what that industry was like. And to do that, my manager in my previous role put me in touch with somebody that worked at school. And in doing so, I realised that there was some real value in that. And so I started reaching out to people. And these are just some of the schools that I visited or that I've spoken to. So sometimes it's been on Teams calls, sometimes it's been on the phone. I've had in-person tours and visits. And we've spoken about what it's like to work in these places and how we differ. And I think the value of going into places like this is that you really get to understand what makes your school special. So, for instance, Gemma at Pocklington very kindly had me. There are 2 schools within probably about a half an hour, 40-minute drive of Hymers, Tranby, Sarah's here as well, and Pocklington. And I very quickly went round and realised what makes us special and different, and that the reality is, yes, we could say we're in competition, but I suppose it's more like Sally mentioned earlier, it's are they going to be in independent education or are they not? Because the reality is when I've been around these schools and I've met these students and I've met their families, is that it's really made me realise what our school has that others don't, and the kind of families that are really going to thrive in our environment. And I think, like Joe said, I don't want them to be with us if we're not the right place for them. And so that's really helped me in lots of different ways. And I've made friends along the way. Hi, Kate. I know that Jess as well. So that was when she was at Bradford Grammar and she's at GSAL now, watching from home. So thank you very much to everybody that's had me and had me look around. You're all very welcome to come to me if you would like to. But I think when you're networking, the important thing to remember is it's not about you or what you need. It's more about what is that value of that relationship for the other person as well. So with every interaction that I have, I try to go into it as if I'm trying to make a new friend, rather than how can they help me? How can I help them? And so you'll find that that transparency that comes from true relationships rather than those transactional ones will not only be more valuable for you in the long run, but it'll also be a lot more fun. So I'm already pestering Kate now to let me go back for an ice cream on the beach. So there was a survey on there, I'll try it again at the end. But essentially, I think one of the key things that I realised when I was going around is how lonely people feel. Quite a lot of people, they're the only one, or there's only a handful of people, and they're trying to do the jobs of 20 people with the resource of about 3 if they're lucky. So for instance, at Hymers, we might look like we've got good numbers. So for instance, so in admissions and development, there are 7 of us in total, but every single one, bar one, is part-time. So actually, if you add up how many people that is, it's not as many as you think, really. But as we go on, so some best practice takeaways that I found from going around these schools so far is the impact of PR first and foremost. So when I met with Jess at Bradford Grammar, they were in full prep for results day, and I'd never seen anything like it. Honestly, the amount of stories that they generated and the kind of press coverage that they'd kind of already got in the bag, ready to go, was just phenomenal. They'd literally been working on generating stories for months, and they gained national coverage as a result, which was just brilliant. Now I can write a press release, but do I have loads of contacts? No, I do not. So I expanded my team. So I've started working with a PR freelancer who is a previous journalist in our area. So now please bear in mind we are a day school, so it is my immediate catchment that I'm after, whereas some of you are obviously trying to go national, and I know that is a lot more different. But we gained a significant amount of coverage in the last 12 months. So from Hull Daily Mail, Yorkshire Post to Sky Sports, The One Show, lots of stuff online as well as in print, but it was just easier to put the in-print stuff up there. But I think it's important to look at that. So topics included everything from results to sport, outreach events within the community. And so essentially I'm just trying to keep Hymers top of mind at this difficult time. And I think it's also really important to keep an eye on what your local competitors are doing, or national if relevant. So if you haven't already, set up Google Alerts with those terms. So yes, I know every time something is in the post about Pocklington or Tranby, and I also know when we are as well and what they're saying. And that helps you find your place and where you fit and how you're going to find your families as well. And on the flip side of that, in terms of negative PR now, I met with Helen, who's Director of External Relations at GSAL, and she reminded me just how far a crisis can stretch in a school. So she was speaking about a situation where literally someone was on the doorstep of their governor's houses. And so it's not just pupils and staff, it's not at the school, it's further afield. So you have got to take into consideration all of those stakeholders. So on that topic, here are a few kind of PR crises that you might encounter if you haven't already. And unfortunately for me, I have had some of these in my time. So leadership crisis, someone's left unexpectedly. I had somebody that had been financial mismanagement, that kind of thing. You never really know what's financial mismanagement, what's going to happen. Allegations of abuse, health-related crises. So that could be, could be anything like COVID, or it could be, for instance, when I worked at the college, there was avian flu, that kind of thing. How that's going to impact on your wider community as well. Bus crashes, deaths, including suicide. So I've had suicide, I've had attempted suicide, I've had students that have been in car crashes, and it is devastating for the entire community. Missing students and riots as well. An intruder or other safety concerns. So these kinds of things are popping up more than you think they are. This was just an example just earlier this month where there was a fight at Doncaster College. So FE and HE College in the centre of Doncaster. They had to evacuate the whole site. They were locking them down in classrooms, all that kind of thing, because there was a fight that broke out and the people on site had knives. And you just really don't know what you're going to get. Now, touch wood, this never happens to us, but I think what's really important to think about is, would you be ready to handle this? What would you do if something like this happened? Because it could do. And I mean, who would you go to? So do you need external support? Do you have a crisis comms plan? Who are your key points of contact? And do they understand the importance of working with you? And do they need training? So for instance, if it's going to be your headmaster that's going to be stood at the front for whatever situation it is, can he talk to the press or she talk to the press? It's a he in my case. How would he handle those difficult situations? And does he need training for that? And identifying your families and their needs. So utilise data. So you'll have your own, you'll have lots of different things you can do. Create maps. Where are your pupils coming from? Where do they live, the current pupils? What about prospective families, applicants, inquiries? If they've withdrawn, where do they live with? And use the DFE data as well to see your market share. So really define your customers' demographics and how this has changed over time. Look for areas of potential growth. And listen as well. So what stands out most for them on tours, and how are you shouting about that? I think it was Jess actually at Bradford said that Sarah, who spoke earlier, had been round to look at Bradford Grammar, and she raved about the library, which she never thought of as being a selling point. And so you don't always know. I think especially if you've worked at a school for a long time, it's very easy to kind of see what makes your school as special as just the everyday, really. So shout about those everyday moments and what makes you different. And I got lots of advice about this as well from for people on the way. So I had advice and guidance from Laura at Lady Brown House, Wendy, who's here today from Hurlington, and Pockrington, about how you could make that better for your parents and how you're engaging with them. They are really busy people. So don't just think about what works for you and the information that you need to get from them, but think about what they will want from you and plan your advertising and plan your admission strategy accordingly as well. So if they're, for instance, requesting the prospectus and they want a digital copy, don't make them wait a week to receive an email from you with that. Make it automated. And so we started using Open Apply recently, admissions platform that I'm sure lots of you already use. And I think some of the automation from that has really helped us to personalise our customer journeys and keep in touch with them and know exactly where they all are in that funnel, which is really important. And it gives you that time to personalise it. So yes, that prospectus has gone out automatically, but we then can follow up and have that one-to-one conversation with our parents. But you'll get to know them and you'll get to know what they're like. So our parents are not sat in ivory towers, they don't have a load of money, they are making sacrifices, and they're normal people that speak to you like normal people. So like Maddie was saying, I like to try and speak to them like that. And I've had some funny looks and some crinkled noses where I said that we're trying to inject humour in our social media, for instance, in the way that we talk to people, and using emojis and being a little bit more colloquial, because that's not how an independent school should do it. But who are your parents? You want them to know that you're relatable. I've had parents more than once on a tour that have said, I was really worried about coming today. Like, a parent should never feel like that, but they were worried that we were all going to be really snooty and that they wouldn't feel at home. And we want them to be part of that family, don't we? I think every school likes to say, it's like a family here, but you want them to feel comfortable. So don't get distracted by what other people are saying, because you have that data and you know what's working for you. So yes, SLT might like to see a billboard, but will your families like to see that billboard? And that leads us on to family engagement. So your current families and your prospective families are your customers. And I think it's very easy, especially with current families, for people to take them for granted. So you need to treat them with care. So don't forget how busy they are and what they really need from you. Think about keep warm. So, right, you've had somebody that's come to an open event in October, they've applied in November, they've had their entrance assessment in January, but what are you doing with them next? How are you keeping in touch with them? How can you engage them? So we have had a series of different events, community events, that have invited current parents, prospective parents, and also the wider community as well. So everything from astronauts to the next one's parenting in the digital age. It's things that people can come in and they can see the community and the added value that they will get from our school. And hilariously, we do have a teddy bear. I know it was spoken about earlier that they've landed in charity shops, but this particular girl here, they applied 3 years before she will be joining us. She doesn't join us for another 2 years, and I get regular updates on what that child is doing with that teddy bear. So that teddy bear went out in a little box addressed to the child with a personalised card that said, I don't know, Dear Sophie, and introduced the bear, what that was going to mean and how she'd get in touch. And so she's already keeping in touch with us about that, which is just brilliant, really. So do you have a family engagement plan, and what are you doing to keep people warm? Are you sending good luck cards before they come to entrance assessments? Are you checking in with emails? Are you inviting them to events? How are you updating them on what's happening at the school? So one of the things we started last year is, for all year sevens, a member of our team is now going into their current school to see them. And so they take with them a VR headset, which has got a little welcome. So it'll be like, oh, hi, I'm in year 6, you're going to be in my house with me. And they show them around, and they can see what an assembly looks like. They can see where they'll get the bus, where they'll go to the dining hall. So break down those barriers. And I think one of those big ones is, how do you join a school? So if you've not joined that school in preschool, it can feel really scary to join midway through. So think about what those challenges are and how you can address them. And most importantly, I think, is to be inspired by other industries. So that might be other areas of education, FE, HE. It might be things like destinations like this one. So a previous colleague of mine now works at the Bullring in Birmingham, and she did a light show. You can see it bottom left. which actually brought the Aurora Borealis to Birmingham, which is quite rare. And how you can share your brand as well, so whether that's University of Hull with their giant deck chairs, or they also had a thing where they were really trying to push their sustainability, and so they had a plastic ban, and so they went around to all sorts of, you're nodding at me, Kate, were you involved with that one? Went around to all sorts of different places, and I still remember that because we went to one event, and if you put plastic in, basically to be recycled or passed forward or whatever they were doing with it, I think they actually used it, didn't you create something with it in the end? Then you could go on a fairground ride, and my daughter was absolutely delighted. But think about how you can engage with your audience. So who do you follow on social media, and what's their tone of voice like? How does that match with what you want to do? Do you want to be really serious, or do you want to bring a bit of humour into that? And how are they doing that? Have you read about marketing award winners? So not just, for instance, who's won an award at the ANKIS conference, but what about the Heist Awards, FE First Awards, other areas of education? They quite often put up profiles of what people have done and how they've won their awards. And you might find that there's more you're doing that's award worthy than you even know about. And you might be inspired as well. So I think it's really important to look at that. And what are other locations in your area doing? So what events are families engaging with? So for instance, we quite often in Hull have events. And the latest one, I think, was like a science and arts mashup, but it will give you an idea as to what your families are engaging with in the wider community as well. So my last piece of advice today is to think big and then scale it back. So you will hear all sorts of wonderful things that you could do today, and that's great. But please do not go home and pressure yourself in that, why am I not doing this and why am I not doing that? Because you might be a team of 1 or 2 or 3, and you might have a budget of £20,000, or you might have a budget of £200,000. I mean, I don't, sadly. But think about that, and you know, whether that's following up on yesterday's tour, writing that press release you've been putting off, or focusing on the big impacts that you want to help you prioritise the little things to make every day a little bit more impactful. Thank you.